Thank you all for joining us today. Super excited. This is our third webinar that we've done with Adam. Super excited to have him back. This, in a sense, is an extension of actually our Leadership Forum, which is a 9-month program that we run with Adam. We'll do a little bit further introduction to that at the end of the webinar. So if you're impressed with today, you get something out of it, and you like the format, stick around and learn a bit more about our Leadership Forum. We meet once a month for the first 9 months of the year. Adam presents content, and then it turns into a peer-to-peer session. It's a great way to develop yourself and other leaders within your organization. So stick around for that. For those of you that are not familiar with me, I'm Brad Konik, CEO of Konik Technical Talent Network. We've been in the Twin Cities here since 1974. We've placed over 20,000 candidates in positions throughout Minnesota and the Midwest. We've helped over 1,000 companies find technical talent in the engineering, manufacturing, and AEC industries. So our company's core purpose is to positively impact people's lives. And we put this webinar together because we do believe that helping our clients, our prospects, those within our network become better leaders, and helping them retain employees was an opportunity to do just that, positively impact people's lives. So thank you all for joining us. Our presenter today is Adam Carroll. Adam is the founder of Renzo Experience, which is a leadership development and culture consulting firm based in the Midwest. Adam's worked with thousands of companies, thousands of leaders, I should say, to help create clarity and alignment within their organizations. He is a 2-time TED Talk speaker, with one of his talks surpassing 6 million views. So you should check that out when you get an opportunity. We're excited to have him here with us again today. With that, Adam, I'll turn it over to you.
Brad, thank you so much. Always an amazing wingman to have on these webinars, so I appreciate you being there. Brad's going to come on screen and let me know when there's a question in the Q&A box. So if anything strikes your fancy or poses a question for you mentally, throw it in there. If you're thinking it, someone else is thinking it as well. Welcome to today's webinar. We're going to be talking about building longevity through employee reviews, and we add in their future plans. And this is a really critical piece of today's webinar. This ultimately is a bit of an introduction to the Konik Leaders Forum, which Brad so eloquently described at the beginning. This is a 9-month forum that we do once a month. It's a chance to network with like-minded leaders, people who are growth-oriented, but people who are going through the same kinds of challenges that you might be. And so it provides an opportunity to get peer-to-peer coaching and guidance on certain issues, as well as create a well-rounded leadership framework for you to operate from. And today's forum is exactly that, today's webinar. We're going to talk about this employee review process because we're in that stage of the game right now. So it is mid-November, and here's my question to y'all. How many of you are dragging your feet yet on the employee review process? More than likely, there's a few of you in this tribe that's online with us right now. I see a couple hands raised. If you're dragging your feet, there's good reason to. The traditional employee review process is dreaded by leaders. It's frustrating to direct reports. And our goal is to really figure out how to change the narrative around these employee reviews, to make them more supportive, but ultimately to create engagement with your direct reports so that they feel like they have a real say in their own direction and guidance and experience and growth within the company. I did this informal survey with some friends of mine, and I said, how do you find the employee review process? And one story really stood out to me in particular. This gentleman said, what I realize is if I put exceeds expectations, I give myself a big old thumbs up on the paperwork, then my leader naturally gives me an exceeds expectations. And I said, you can't be serious. He said every single time for the last 6 years, when he started putting exceeds expectations, then he would get an exceeds expectations from his leader. And I said, so is that rewarding for you? And he said, I don't really care. I like my job. I'm going to stay there. I'm not going anywhere, which is fine in a case like that. But for some people, if they're just getting, hey, good job, keep it up, it's not nearly enough feedback for them to leverage going into the next year. So some may feel like they're being shortchanged a bit on the guidance or feedback, and it may not feel very safe to give you the kind of feedback to make you a better leader at the same time. So let's take a little look back over the past couple of years. We have been through the Great Resignation. That was 2020 and into 2021. And the Great Resignation was really all about people realizing that they weren't all that engaged in the work they were doing. I have heard it said that in the midst of COVID and post-COVID, people were just looking for a natural end. And the issue was, it seemed that COVID had no end. It was ubiquitous. It was everywhere. It was going to continue. And so people had a natural ending. They would just resign from their job. I think we're out of the Great Resignation at this point, but what we are now into is the Great Reprioritization. And the Great Reprioritization is the sense that your employees now have a greater sense of what they feel purposeful and passionate about, because we've been through the doldrums, and a lot of them, and many of you may have experienced this as well. In the last year, if you ever felt, is this all there is? Then what we're looking for is something that's greater, a greater purpose, greater meaning, greater impact. And so whether you know it or not right now, many of your direct reports are looking to reprioritize what is most important to them. And they want to do it at work, but they really need their leaders' help in doing that. And we'll talk about why that's the case as we move through the content here today. So here's a question. If you have 6 or more direct reports, are you dreading doing the employee reviews? And if you are, I can 100% understand why. One of my good friends has 20 direct reports. I asked him what his process is. He said there's nothing really that formal that we go through in the process, but he said I'll spend 20 or 30 minutes per person preparing for the one-on-one. I will then spend somewhere between 60 and 90 minutes doing the employee review. And he said at the end, that's 2 hours per person times 20 people. That's an entire work week spent doing employee reviews on top of all the other work that he needs to get done. And I said, let me pose a scenario to you, just a question. If I could save you 30% time on this, would you be open to it? And he said, yeah, I think I would. So here's what I suggested to him. And it was the same advice a mentor of mine gave me some time ago. Had made my living as a professional speaker for a number of years. And I was called into a consulting group, and we were doing a large project with a vast number of people. And so I was facilitating a room one day, and my mentor came up to me and he said, Adam, you're working too hard. And I said, what do you mean? He said, with all these people in the room, have them do the work. You just have to facilitate their discussion, but you're working too hard. And I'm not saying that leaders can rest back on their laurels for the one-on-one, because there requires a little bit of prep time for it. But I'm going to propose to you that what is going to happen is you're going to put a majority of the work on your direct reports to prepare for this one-on-one, that they actually need to do some of the homework as well to better prepare you to best support them in doing purposeful work into the future. There is a quote by a guy named Patrick Lencioni, who wrote a book called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. And the quote goes something like this: people will walk through fire for a leader that's true and human. And I'm going to paint with a very broad brush here, but the majority of one-on-one employee reviews are neither true nor human. They're literally going through and checking boxes. How would you rate yourself on a scale? Blah, blah, blah. It's an interesting measuring stick, but it's not a very effective one. And so if we are going to show up as true and human leaders, one of the things that we actually have to do is get to know our employees really, really well, get to know what their passions are, what their purpose is, what drives them, what their frustrations are, what gives them energy, and what is just stuff in their day. And when we know that, we can start to really support them in their growth and development in the company. Because deep down, one of the things that our team members really want from us is to know that we have their back no matter what. And if you as a leader have your team members' backs no matter what, they will walk through fire for you. Case in point, It was PricewaterhouseCoopers in the 2022 Global Workforce Hopes and Fears Survey. They surveyed over 50,000 people, and these were the results that came out. The question was, what are the most important factors when considering a change in work environment? And this was based on the percentage of respondents. So you'll notice that the top number, the top percentage was compensation related. I am fairly rewarded financially. And we can extrapolate some ideas from this. One of the things that we could extrapolate is that people who took this survey, some left the company that they had been with for higher compensation. And it would stand true to reason that in 2022 and even 2021, there were folks that if you waved 20 grand in front of them, more than what they were making, they were likely going to jump ship, right? And it had nothing to do with any of the work they were doing. They just saw it as an opportunity to make more. Then we have the next subcategory of answers, which are categorized as meaning. And this is where I think it's really fascinating. If you read these three, I find my job fulfilling, nearly 70%. I can truly be myself, and my team cares about my well-being. Now, you all know this as leaders, but in the last year, one of the healthcare categories in spending that went through the roof was mental health. And so if mental health care is an issue, my team cares about my well-being, I can truly be myself, and by and large, I find my job fulfilling as an aspect of your own mental health. So if we're really focused on our team's well-being, we can help them truly show up the way they want to show up, and we're helping them do fulfilling work. This takes over three, almost half of the buckets that people had in terms of categories when asked, would they consider a change in environment, and why would they? The pink, red-ish boxes there under confidence and competence, we're going to talk about as we get into the content here in just a moment. I can be creative or innovative in my job, and then I can exceed what is expected of me in my job role. Now, these are really fascinating for another reason. And I'm going to share with you some results of an informal survey that we did with hundreds of the leaders with whom we work. And one of the things that we asked them was, what do you think your teams really want from you? And the answers that we got were varied, but we bucketized them into three essential answers. So I might even recommend that you grab a screen grab of this. And if you have not read this study, if you look up PwC Global Workforce Hopes and Fears Survey, Global Workforce Survey will get you there. But this is a really fascinating read. There's probably 5 separate pages of data that you can glean from that will help you understand who within your company may be looking, why they're looking, what they're looking at. It's a really, really fascinating study. So this all set aside, the 3 buckets that we found, our leaders that we work with, were really into and what they said their teams wanted, fell into one of 3 categories. Clarity. They needed to know where the bus was going. They wanted to know that there was alignment meaning that everyone on the bus is going the same direction. And then purpose was something that their team members wanted. And purpose was simply, it was said in a number of different ways, but ultimately was, does the work that they do matter? Does it give them value? Do they find that when they show up every day, they have an impact and there is an outcome from the work that they do? So when we talk about clarity in terms of this one-on-one, one of the very first questions that you might ask your direct report is, are you clear on what the most important priorities for our department or this team are? And then find out and say, I'd like you to be really, really candid with me, because if there is a lack of clarity, then I haven't done my job as a leader, and I would like to know that as well. From an alignment perspective, it is everyone on the team going in the same direction? Quoting Patrick Lencioni again from 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, he is quoted often as saying, if everyone on the team is rowing in the same direction at the same time, then you can dominate any industry against any competition in any economy. And yet many, many companies today have team members and maybe even departments that are all rowing in separate, disparate directions. So is there alignment among the teams and the departments? And lastly, that whole idea of purpose is really important in that Is the work that you're doing filling your bucket at the end of the day? My wife is a school nurse, and we're really struggling this with right now because she knows that her purpose is there to take care of those kids. But there are 700 children in her school, 5 of whom are diabetics. She is inundated every day in her office. And she'll come home and I'll say, "Did the purpose override your stress?" And she'd say, "No." And there are some days she'll say, "Yes, I got more hugs. It was a leaner day. It was easier." But on a week by week basis, what we're doing is saying, on a scale of 1 to 10, how purposeful was this week versus how stressful was this week? And to paint a very clear picture, we're all going to have stress, particularly in the months and year ahead. But if the purposeful work that we're doing can override that stress, meaning we leave every day going, "I made a difference today. It was impactful. I know the work I'm doing matters," then we can move on from there. Now, here is the interesting thing about all three of these: clarity, alignment, and purpose. If it is not super clear whether or not there is clarity, there is alignment, or there is purposeful work, and maybe, just maybe, your direct report doesn't feel safe in telling you these things, then what's going to happen is there's going to be expectations that they have of you. And so one of the questions I like to ask of my direct reports is this: what do you need to thrive in your job? And I will ask point blank, how much appreciation are you wanting or needing? How much direction do you need from me versus can you be self-directed just based on the vision? How much experience are you looking for in terms of conferences and uh, new experiences, new skills that you want to learn, which leads to growth? Where do you want to grow in the job? What do you want to take? Do you want to take more public speaking classes? Do you want to take more leadership, more agile development classes? What is it you want to do growth wise? And this is the most interesting thing. If these things aren't brought up from direct report to leader or leader to direct report, as I mentioned before, there is an expectation that they are there. Case in point, I've worked with a number of young employees, and I will say, "Well, what is it you need from your leader?" And they'll say, "They should know. I need appreciation." And what I'll come back with often is, what if they don't know? What if they don't know that you need appreciation on a weekly basis? And FYI, for what it's worth, some of you, if you have hired a young person, and young, I would throw in the category of 22 to 32, right? 35 even. Some of those folks grew up getting constant feedback. My children go to high school, my daughter's in college. They check their grades on a daily basis. My high school sons come home from school and they scroll on their phone, they refresh this app that shows what their grades are, and they're tracking it every single day. And what they're getting is immediate, instant feedback. But if your direct reports are not getting that from you, but they're expecting it of you, then deep down there may be some frustration, right, at the fact that they're not getting it from you. I heard a great quote, and I'm going to share this with you, and you're going to hear it time and time again throughout the forum. The quote is this: "Uncommunicated expectations are just pre-planned resentments." This is worth a screen grab. Uncommunicated expectations are just pre-planned resentments. You no doubt have hired someone brand new, had some assumptions, had some expectations of them, and deep down are just kind of resentful they're not getting something done. And what we have to ask ourselves as leaders is, did I ever really communicate that expectation? The same is true for your direct reports who have expectations of you as their leader. And the expectations may be things like, "Well, I need 30 minutes a week of your time." And that may be an uncommunicated expectation, which is 100% unrealistic. But until it's communicated, only then can you actually say, "I'm sorry, this is not possible. I can give you 15 or 20 minutes guaranteed. We can go grab coffee once a week, and we'll chat, on the route. But to carve out that much time based on the size of the team I have, not possible." I don't know where exactly this came from, but I'm going to assume it was a very wise marriage therapist. There you go. That's a joke. Okay. So here's the deal. Uncommunicated expectations are just pre-planned resentments. I did a program here in my home area with a group of young leaders. And one of the things I had them do is the exercise that I'm going to present to you here in just a couple moments, that I'm going to have you do with your direct reports. I had them do this exercise. And at the end of it, I said, what was the hardest part of this? And they said, I don't really know what 2 years or 3 years out looks like for my career. And I said, oh, that's interesting. What do you think your leader thinks about that? And they said, well, candidly, I'm waiting for my leader to tell me where they want me to go, where they see my career going. And this is what I'm reminded of when I started talking to their leaders about the answers I was getting. They said, I'm waiting for my direct report to tell me where they want to take their career. And I said, so you have this impasse. One group is waiting for the direct reports to tell them where they want to go, and the direct reports are waiting for the leaders to tell them where they can go. And so ultimately, you have both parties sitting there saying, you first. Only they're not saying it. They're just uncommunicating an expectation. And so there's probably this shared resentment between the two of you that this particular one-on-one that I want to share with you is going to make all the difference in the world in terms of this conversation. So I want to introduce a book to you all. Highly recommend that you order this book on Amazon today. You'll have it by the weekend. You can read it through the weekend and be ready to do your one-on-ones effectively next week, if you so choose, or maybe after Thanksgiving. Here's the book. The Science of Intentional Transformation. Dr. Benjamin Hardy wrote the book called Be Your Future Self Now. And this book does an amazing job of explaining why we must create a future vision of who we are and where we're going in order to pull ourselves there. Here's the challenge with one-on-ones traditionally. They're look backs. And so when we look back at the last year or the last 6 months or quarter or whenever you do them, if we're looking back and we're saying, well, you could have done this better and you could have done this better and this, we need a little bit more out of you on this. This initiative didn't go as well as we thought it would go. What happens is there creates a natural gap. And the gap that is there is like, well, you could have done better. And so traditionally speaking, psychologists, I think, created that gap and said, people want to strive to close the gap. They're going to get better in the next year. But there's also something called the gain. And the gain is, look how far you've come and where do you now want to go? And if you want to go as far as 2 years or 3 years out, what does that look like? Dr. Benjamin Hardy talks about human beings as a species are the only species that have the ability for prospection. And prospection is the idea that we can create what our future looks like and then begin making decisions based on that view or vision of the future. But for most of us as leaders, what we're not doing is we're not sitting down with our people and saying, tell me what 2 or 3 years out looks like for you personally and professionally. Instead, we look back and we go, how do you think last year went? Okay, well, carry on, right? Exceeds expectations, 2 thumbs up. And then people are walking away from that going, I guess I feel good. I'm probably going to get my 4 or 5 or 6% raise. Maybe I get a bonus. But I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to do differently or better. I guess I'm exceeding already. So here is the way we do this. Using some of the guidance from Be Your Future Self Now, we're going to add in a little prospection, this idea that when we look out into the future, what will life be like into the future? And what I'm going to suggest you do with your teammates, and this goes back to you're working too hard, the advice I got from my mentor. For you as a leader, if you're getting ready to prepare for your one-on-one, what if you simply assigned a project to your direct reports and the project is this? I want you to write a 3-year letter to either me or to yourself or to your spouse or whomever. Ideally, if it's a one-on-one, it's probably to you as the leader. But what this 3-year letter is a letter written, in this case to you, let's say, and it is written as if it is 3 years out from today's date. And the person writing the letter is looking back as if everything has happened exactly as they imagined it. The reason we do this, there's a couple of them. Number one is, as you can see, research shows most people overestimate how much they can accomplish in 1 year, but they underestimate what they can achieve in 3 years. And so by looking out 3 years, people may literally astonish themselves at what's possible 3 years out. So the instructions are very simple. 3 years from today, what have you accomplished? And write it down personally, professionally. What do you want to do at work? Are there trips you want to take? Are there accomplishments you want to have accomplished by the time you're 3 years out? Who are you writing the letter to? Again, could be to you, could be to themselves, could be to a spouse or a loved one. What location are you writing the letter from? And the goal is to share as much as you'd care to. If you have a brand new employee, then we would call it the arena, the amount that you know about them and they know about you. The arena is not very big. So they may be less likely to share a ton. But if you know someone really well, you might ask them, I want to know about, what do you want personally? What do you want professionally? How can I support you in all the things that you want to do? And here's some of the themes to consider: benefits you've received, obstacles you've removed, the impact on others, growth, the assessment of your life progress to date. All of these go into that 3-year letter. And what I would have them do is, if you really want to add another notch, give them a $10 Starbucks gift card, send them to the coffee shop and say, go spend an hour and just write your 3-year letter. When I'm in a group, what I'll often do is I'll say, you have 12 minutes to finish this letter. And people will go deep in 12 minutes. But this is not a 12-minute exercise. This is like a Friday night with a bottle of creative juice kind of exercise, candidly. So let your teammates devote some time to this 3-year letter. And the benefit to you is many, many fold. Number one, you come off as true and human. And the reason you do is because you want to know, how can you best support them in areas of their life, in growth, the impact that they want to have on others. What you'll find through the letter is, what do people find purposeful about their work? They may say in the letter, I want to stop doing this kind of work that I'm currently doing. And when you read that in the letter, you might say, tell me more about that. I thought you loved that work. And they might say, I hate it. It's stuff. It's not energy for me. It's just stuff. And so you, as their leader, may be able to redirect them into a different category of work. The end result, when we do this really, really well, is we get to know what really drives all of our team members at a cellular level. And if we can help drive them to those things, support them in that, what you will have in agile terminology is you'll have a self-managing team, because the team is doing work that's meaningful, it's purposeful to them, it's energy, it's not stuff. And because there's clarity and alignment behind it, they can all help manage each other on the process. You as a leader get to step back and just admire what your team is accomplishing, but it requires that you know what each of them wants in the process. Here's what's challenging about this for most leaders. And I've got a couple of slides left, and then I'm going to open it up for Q&A. So Brad, I know we had a question, and I'm going to turn it over to you in just a moment. Here's what happens in most organizations. There is low stress and there is high stress environments. And by nature, there are low touch and high touch environments. And by touch, what I mean is how in touch, how many meetings, how many one-on-ones, how much personal information do you have, or how knowledgeable are you about your teammates individually, right? That's what touch is really all about. So in a low stress, low touch environment, it's a boring, disinterested culture. Think about a small bank where only like 6 or 7 people a day come in. They've had the same 4 employees for years and years and years. It's just boring, right? A low stress, high touch culture is a casual environment, a casual culture. Think about an insurance office that has a lot of young people working there, and they love hanging out. They do happy hours and socials and have a Christmas gathering. They just really enjoy hanging out. It's a casual culture. Low touch, high stress is a stressed, maxed out culture. And in the midst of 2020 and 21, more than likely, we had a lot of stressed, maxed out cultures where people were part of the Great Resignation, candidly. But we're going to look at the next 12 months differently. And what we want to be is, if we are in high stress, we also want to be in high touch. And when we do this well, what we create is a growing, thriving culture. High touch requires a couple of things. Number one, you need to know about each of your team members. Number two, you need to be able to engage them in a way that they feel rewarded, supported, and that the work they get to do is purposeful, that gives them energy. I've said energy and stuff a lot, but it gives them energy. It's not just stuff that's draining for them. And the reason that I wanted this slide to be one of the last is we teach exactly how to do this through the Konik Leaders Forum. So if you like this kind of content, the forum itself is 9 individual sessions, and the sessions are developed this way. We'll do somewhere between 60 and 90 minutes of content similar to what you've seen. It's very interactive. There's typically anywhere from 20 to 30 people in the room, either personally in the room, or we will do some of them virtually. You'll get a great knowledge base on leadership, on understanding communication and social styles, how to have difficult conversations, how to give feedback effectively, both ask for it and give it. We go through a number of different modules that will help you hone your skills as a leader. So 9 months of leadership development curriculum. Roundtable discussions make up the last 60 minutes where we do timely and topical issues that professionals just like you are experiencing, with a little bit of peer-to-peer mentorship and guidance around the table. And obviously built-in relationships with people from maybe positions similar to yours, but could be in different industries, or could be similar industries, but in a different role, that's helpful to get their experience and their guidance in the room. And then obviously exposure to cutting edge recruiting tools and strategies through the folks at Konik. We're going to get started in January for the Leaders Forum. And if you have anyone that you know of, either on your team or you personally, that you think would benefit from this, simply visit the website down below, koniknetwork.com/leadership forum, to go in and find out more information, plug in your details, and a member of the Konik team will give you some insight and input into that as well. We'll come back and circle back to some of the details on this, but Brad, I'm going to kick this back to you. I know there was at least one question that was posed, and I'd love to know what that was.
Yeah, it was actually just based around whether the session was recorded and how they would get access to it. So we do plan on sending out the recording to all individuals that registered, whether you attended or not. So if you had to, if people were jumping in and out, missed part of it, everyone will receive the recording. Yep. So that was the only question that was posed right now. We'll give it a few more minutes here that things have wrapped up. I'll keep an eye on the questions, but yeah, just to follow up, we ran our first leadership forum last year. Adam and I have had some great conversations. It's going to be bigger and better. We learned a lot, but it was great. We received a lot of great feedback, and it's an opportunity for people to step outside of the day-to-day and really think about how they can continue to grow as leaders, and how they can have other leaders within their organizations grow. I know that, throughout the years, I've been involved in a number of different leadership forums, many of them costing, anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000 a year. This, from my experience this last year, was one of the most cost-effective ways. The membership will come in this year probably around the 2,000 mark, if not even a little below that. And it's a great return on investment for yourself and your leaders. So, please take the time to follow the link and learn more about it. We'd love to have you inquire, ask any questions, and consider joining us. We do cap it at 20 total. So it's a smaller group. It very much has the same feel as today, with basically the add-on that after Adam presents the content, we have a roundtable discussion. So we have real-time, real experience conversations about what people are going through at their companies. And we get a lot of great input and learn from each other. So the peer-to-peer side of it is an absolutely fantastic part of the leadership forum. So. And I did have someone just pose, how much does the leadership forum cost? So again, we're just finalizing the pricing, but it'll be somewhere around that $2,000 mark. That's for the 9 months. So it's 9 sessions. This next year, we're going to have some takeaways and a little bit of homework that you'll take away. It might be to come back with some examples where you've implemented or utilized the tools and skills that we've discussed. It might be a book. It might be reading part of or all of a book and bringing that back the next time. So that is there. Here was another one here posed, actually by Rob Sink, one of the members from last year's leadership forum. The 3-year letter, how best to have our direct reports think in depth and stretch. I'm assuming much of their focus will be short-term and work-related, but I'm guessing it should include their personal non-work life goals. So how do you get them to kind of think outside the box, Adam? Go a little bit deeper, get their vision a little bit pushed a little further out, and also to delve into the all important personal side of things as well.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question that Rob poses, because I think there are some people on your team that are open books. They will share everything. And there are some folks that will keep some of that close to vest, right? They'll keep that close to their chest. And I think that the key and the critical thing from a leader's perspective is, number one, create an environment where it's really safe to share that kind of information, and to say, I really want to support you, not just professionally, but personally. And maybe you know a little bit about the person where, as an example, work-life balance is very important to them. Maybe they have young kids and they're in athletics, and they leave from time to time mid-afternoon to go to events. You might say to them, hey, I know your kids are super important to you. I see you go into their games, and I know how proud you are of their accomplishments. What can I do to help support that side of your life in addition to the work side of your life? So if that means that maybe there's a little bit more work from home opportunity, or you want to go to some of these conferences because maybe you could take your kids to a professional athletics game of some kind that you're interested in, how can I help you do that in a way that gives your life purpose and meaning outside of work? I think this is the critical piece, Brad and Rob, is that we hire people in our companies to do the work, and we compensate them fairly for doing it. We appreciate them on the regular, hopefully. But sometimes what we fail to do is realize that it's an entire person, and the work is only just part of who they are. We have to know who they are outside of work to help support that. And the more supportive we are of that, the more true and human we actually become. Again, hoping that our people then will walk through fire for us as a result.
Great. Thanks, Adam.
Yeah, it's a great question.
Here's another question here. Are there any nuances to the idea of prospective reviews that might be more industry specific? For example, we are a small 15-person residential architectural firm.
Okay. So, and maybe clarify the question for me, Brad, if you can. More industry specific, one-on-one feedback type opportunities?
Yes, yes. It's are there any nuances to the idea of prospective reviews that might be more industry specific? Maybe it's related to, the type of work, the type of projects, it's, here's an example, and see if I get this right. It was an anonymous attendee, so I'm not using their name.
Sure.
But in our organization, we have 16 employees. So
Yep.
it might be difficult if someone come in and says, gosh, I'd really like in the next 3 years to have 3 promotions and 3 title changes. And
Yes.
I'd say, well, okay, then you're going to take my job then, because
Right.
if you get 3 promotions, the only option, so they're just, that
Yes.
would be an example. I'm going to interpret it as that is kind
Yep.
of, how do you deal with and structure growth,
Yep.
advancement opportunities, things like that, specific to the size and maybe industry you're in?
Yeah. The way I would answer that is, if we're working with a closely held company and the people feel like they have some control over the direction or trajectory of their career, and that could be the growth, the experience, the projects they're working on, if they feel like they have some say in that, or at the very least, the ability to say, I'd like to work more on these kinds of projects. Is that possible? That is a great thing to get out of those one-on-ones, because as the leader, and candidly, I have a small, closely held team as well. One of the things I want to know from them every year is, what did you love working on? What didn't you love working on? Tell me why for both of those. And how do I put you more in the environment where the work you're doing is giving you purpose and passion, not distinguishing or extinguishing your fire, right? Because I want people who are on fire to come to work every day doing stuff they love and they're passionate about. So in a small, closely held architectural firm, as an example, the one-on-one or the guidance and feedback might look like, what projects do you love working on? How do we get more of those? Could you see yourself taking over a line of business? And if so, what would that look like? What would be your specialty? And let's talk about what that looks like into the future and why would that fire you up to do it. I will say this, and I meant to mention this throughout the content, Brad, that truly believe that our goal as leaders is to either help people out or help people out, right? It's that simple. I want to help people out. I mean, like, let me help you do what you are put here to do, or let me help you out because this isn't the right bus for you. And it doesn't make anyone a bad person. What it means is that you as a leader are ultimately supportive of where they want to go in life. And we hate to lose people, especially good people who are productive members of our team. But if they're not fired up and passionate about the work they're doing, at some level, their fire will begin to extinguish. And they're going to be looking around trying to find something else. So what if, as leaders, we said to someone, listen, I love you. I want you here. You're an amazing part of this team. You add so much to this team from an impact and purpose standpoint. However, if this isn't for you, I will fully support whatever you decide to do. And it's kind of hearsay or heresy in some companies to let go of someone or to push someone out the door, quote unquote. But if somebody's not happy, man, let's help them out.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. As a smaller organization, I think that's one of the biggest selling points as I'm talking to candidates. So it's something that we could then, incorporate into our review process and have. But I think one of the biggest things that our employees enjoy as a smaller company is they can have a direct impact on the direction of the company and the strategic planning. That's the benefit of being a smaller company. So, yeah, that's a good point.
Any other questions from the tribe? These are great, y'all. I really appreciate everyone hanging out. Hopefully this was helpful. Would love to know if there's resources or anything that you need. Just as Brad mentioned, I want to reiterate that this is recorded and we'll be sending out a recording after the fact. It'll be a link that you can click on and go right to the MP4 file and watch it. So we'll make sure and get that out to everyone along with any resources, including a PDF document that will show you how to do the 3-year letter with your team.
And then when that information goes out, if there are additional questions, feel free to send them in and I can pass them along to Adam and make sure we get the answers back to you. So I don't see anything else popping up. So I think if you're good, Adam, I want to just thank everyone for coming out today. Hopefully you got something out of it, some ideas, some resources to help you better conduct your reviews that are coming up here. So I hope those all go well for everyone. Obviously, a lot of us are here in the Minneapolis area. The roads are nasty, so make sure that if you did come into the office that you get home safely. Please check out our leadership forum and consider inquiring and joining. It's a great experience, great group. We're really excited about the 2023 group. So thank you all again for coming out today, and we'll certainly be in close touch. Have a great day.